You don't realize, but in that moment that you're seeking happiness from that object, you created unhappiness. So you were more happy 1 second before, deep down, right? Or more settled or whatever. But then you might feel that jolt of like excitement or whatever, but then you're creating unhappy because you're like, I need that to be happy. Then when you get it, you think that the thing that made you happy, but what actually made you happy was you ended the seeking for happiness. So then you have the experience of being happy. And so then after you realize that didn't work for a stable, because all we want is unconditional, stable sense of peace and joy, and then fulfillment. That's all we want. And you can say freedom, whatever, but you want it stable and unconditional. But then once you get it, your brain's like, oh, that kind of worked, but not really, because I felt it for a second and it went away. So now I need something else. So then as soon as you get the Apple TV, now you need popcorn. As soon as you get popcorn, you need a better movie. As soon as you get a better movie, you need whatever, right? And so the trap is thinking that more makes us happy. And it's not like, don't think of it as a black and white philosophy in the sense where you're like, if I have less, I'm happy. No, it's just every time you get more, you want more. And every time you get more, you want more. And every time you get more, you want more. It's because the happiness has nothing to do with that.
What's going on, guys? I'm really excited about today. I have my close buddy, Josh McCray. You heard me right, McCray. One letter switch in the last name, McCray. Josh is joining me today. I met Josh through a personality community called Objective Personality. And actually the first time Josh and I hung out was on a video like this, but we were both with our partners and we were playing a couples game during the pandemic. So that was the first time.
All right, guys, we're looking forward to see who can win.
But the funny thing about Josh and I is we not only share similar last names, but our ex-partners were like the identical personality type. And what's cool is our personality community, the founders are trying to prove that personality is genetic. As they started organizing personalities together, they kind of stumbled on like similar types looking alike. So I'm going to put up a picture of our exes just so you can see, because it's crazy. And then there's also a picture of you, Josh, and Raja, your type.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll put that up too. But all that to say, Josh and I are kindred spirits. We've been through a lot of the same things. So I'm really excited to talk with you, Josh. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it today. So before I get into anything, I've got some questions for you. But I made a video a couple of weeks ago about accepting bad in self and accepting bad in others, and just some things I've been working through. And one thing I want to say to introduce you, Josh, is just to say you've been super supportive in my journey of helping me really balance between myself and other people. And so, to say this in the simplest terms possible, one of the major things that I've learned in this personality study is that, half the world is really balanced with people, and half the world is really balanced with like missing information, control, chaos, like things, physical things. And I'm definitely in balance with people, and you're definitely really balanced with people. And so I've really appreciated our friendship and just that balance that you brought to the table for me. So all that's to say, a lot of the stuff I talk about is people oriented. So I'm excited to get your insights today. Yeah, man. But initially, before we get into any of the meat of anything, I just wanted to kind of give you the floor, let you talk a little bit about your journey. I know you grew up Christian, and this channel actually used to be a Christian channel. You have a twin brother who's definitely still a Christian. He runs a pretty big like Christian YouTube channel. So yeah, man, I wanted to hear about your journey, kind of maybe how you grew up, what caused you to start maybe thinking differently, and how that, what that experience was like.
Gosh, if I can remember that far. All right, so I grew up, pretty religious, but not as much from a pushing standpoint. Yeah, my parents were both Christian, but really it kind of picked up with my auntie. She really, when I was about 14, 15, and that's when I went really intense into Christianity. It was off balance, right? Like I would, not want to be around certain people that I thought were not Christian, or tell people I think they might be going to hell, things like that. It was like preachy a little bit, So yeah, and then I'd say when right around between the ages of 20 and 24, I started being open to just to check and see, is there more, or is this it, just the Christianity? Because the thing I loved about Christianity was the truths I can find, in the Bible. There was like these nuggets that, when you hear truth, that like hit you. And so I love that, and I wanted more. And I also knew there may be more truths other than just this one book. So it got me kind of curious and thinking. So it's probably about slowly a 3 to 6 year process. Probably, I think we're probably closer to 6 years of slowly like being uncomfortable, because everyone in my family is Christian, and everyone's like, you don't do that. Like, you don't think outside those parameters pretty much. So I had a lot of fear of like that, but I still, with my curiosity, just led me to being more open, to exploring more. So long story short, if that's possible for me. Yeah, I just kept being open and more. Some things kind of started conflicting in the logic piece, at least for me. And so around 24 years old, I remember I was like, you know what, I need to go explore other parts of life and see what else is out there. So on my 24th birthday is when I first drank for the first time. The very first day I smoked weed for the first time. Like, I just went all out, because I was like, dude, I've been living based on the fear of disappointing my family. So I actually moved to Colorado Springs to go to Christian college, but after about a month or so, I needed to move back. I was missing my hometown too much, and my girlfriend at the time. So yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know how helpful that answer is, but yeah, you could ask away any questions, man. But it's kind of led me to loving so much parts of Christianity, especially when I was going through my last breakup. The church was a insanely supportive energy that was so healing for me, actually. Because at that point I hadn't stepped in a church for a long time. But it was a really undeniable loving energy that was there. That man, it helped me so much in this last breakup. Man, it was really amazing in ways.
Wow.
The energy was something that I couldn't deny. I was like, I felt like so much love in the air. So yeah. So there's
That's
still
pretty.
so much I love about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long? So that was what, 2 years ago that you did that?
No, that was actually closer to about a year. Yeah.
A year ago. And then
Yeah.
how long had it been since you had been in a church?
Oh, I looked for churches when I first, so I moved to Arizona. I looked for churches when I first came out here, but I didn't find one, which was okay with me. It actually worked better. And I was able to heal the way I needed to on my own, being alone. So, um, yeah, so that was the last time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really just, I went like 2 or 3 times, a few weeks before I moved.
Okay. So do you see that being something that you want to pursue long term? Like, do you see yourself like finding a church, or is it more just about like the community support?
Yeah, no, I don't see that for me personally, because I've found stability in what I needed. It's in within me now. It's not external. But so I don't see that probably necessarily happening.
Okay. So talk about what you just said a little bit. You talked about like you found within you, like what you needed. Do you feel like for you, at least growing up, like that's what Christianity did, was provide something outside of you that kind of allowed you to not really focus on the inside, and that was comfortable? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's the reason why a lot of people look for religion, spirituality, whatever, is to give a sense of security, especially, in a sense of comfort, a sense of safety, in the unknown parts of
Right.
life. So I think it's a way to try to build a sense of comfort in the unknown. Yeah, for the most part. So I think that's part of it. A lot of it was just what I heard, so I just assumed it was true without really thinking about it. But yeah, that's probably that drew me in retrospect, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay. And how old were you? So you said you were in college around the time your views started changing, or how old were you?
I got really into it around 14, 15, and then that lasted until around 22-ish.
Okay. And how old are you now?
I'm 38.
Okay. So it's been a decade and a half of you
Yeah.
not being a Christian, right?
Right. Right.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, probably it's about 10 years. Yeah.
So 10 years. So you've had a
Yeah,
lot of
officially.
time. You've had a lot of time to process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have.
So I mean, you can tell just talking to you. I mean, you're not like, it's not activating. You're kind of in a state of acceptance. That was just a part of my life, it seems like. how is it been like with your family, because they're still all Christians, right?
Yeah, yeah. So luckily, my mom and dad, they're very open to values, in a sense. My mom was very aggressive when I first told her that's kind of how I was feeling at first. My dad just didn't seem to care. He's just like, well, he's like, if I'm right, then at least I'm going to heaven. He's like, and if you're wrong, then that sucks for you. So, but he didn't. He was very. I mean, his mom's atheist, his sister's Wiccan. They're
Hmm.
spread out, so he didn't mind. And then my mom just seemed to be okay too. So they were fine. My twin, I think, had a little bit harder of a time in ways because he loves me, and it's something he really has a fundamental belief in, and I totally understand that. It's just love. He just loves me, so it makes sense to me why it bothered him a lot more. But I think it's probably still bothers him a tiny bit to this day, but he's okay to look past it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how could it not? I mean, if you like actually believe that like heaven and hell are real and you love
Right.
somebody, like you're gonna warn them. Like if just
Right.
like if
Yeah.
someone was about to touch a hot stove, you'd be like, don't do that.
Yeah. Totally.
So I mean, they really believe it, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I saw the interview you and John did. It was a while ago,
Yeah.
but I think one of the reasons I mentioned this early in the episode about you being like really good with people is it's actually really impressive, that you went on there and you and John were able to like just have that calm conversation. I know
Yeah.
you probably went through, a tough time with him to some degree, but I mean, like in my family, it's been really, really difficult. My family is like almost all triggered by people. So we all trigger one
Right.
another a lot.
Right.
So it's just hard to navigate. My brother's like you. He's he's an EP.
Okay.
So
He's like
he's like,
whatever.
yeah, he's like whatever, and he's always like has the best relationship with my parents. Like he's like he just doesn't get phased by a whole lot. So
Right.
I've all that to say, like I think it's really really cool and encouraging for me to see, hey, you can like have differences of opinions and you can see things differently and you can figure it out. Like
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world. So well, I don't want to spend too much time on that. I know you've been really focused on like your journey and your growth, especially over the last year. Like the couple times we've talked, I know you've just literally been laser focused on like, how do I grow? How do I take responsibility? Be the best person I can be. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what do you think it was? Was it like, because I know you were married. Was it that relationship, or what kind of made you get into this like hyper vigilant like growth mode?
Well, I've always been obsessed with personal development. We can start there. It's really hit hyperspeed around 26 with that, just all in on that, entrepreneurship, all that stuff. Now things kind of hit the pedal to the metal in my last marriage, well, my only marriage, but my last relationship, which was my marriage. That kind of hit the pedal to the metal because I thought I found the person that I was going to spend the rest of my life with and be really happy with. But I started, reality kicked in. It's just not how it works, and I saw a lot of patterns from my previous relationships, that things that bothered me in this one. So I was like, wait, it can't be them. It's probably me. So that kind of triggered a bit more curiosity. But we hit really, really, really low lows. I mean, the lowest lows that I've ever experienced times 100. It feels like. So at those times we tried, we had a therapist and it got way worse. So and then there was so much things. We were both in a place, in my opinion, where we were, at least for me, I was exploring a lot of different things. And so there was a lot of emotional imbalance. There was a lot of, from both of our ends, there was a lot of pain that we brought from all our previous relationships. So in other words, when at that time in my life, I had everything. I had my business that's doing really well, all the money that I've ever really cared for. We had a brand new nice house, we had a brand new nice car, had the brand new engagement, marriage, the dogs, everything that people, and all the pleasures. I was hyper speed on pleasure at this time. So all the different things that I've always wanted to do, whether it was sexually experimenting with substances, anything that people say can give you pleasure, happiness, I was all in on all of it. Then I realized what really hit was during that time, especially the relationship, you know, when you're going that kind of speed, the relationship loses stability because it's like you're going. You see what I'm saying? So we were both going kind of in that pleasure way, but I probably was going a bit more intent. Who knows? I don't know. Um, but anyways, so when that hit, I couldn't figure out. I was like, I have everything that I've ever dreamed of. I have all my fantasies and everything completely fulfilled in abundance. Everything I want. Why am I freaking miserable? So for me, it was, look, it's one thing when you don't have money and you think the only reason I'm not happy is because I don't have money, or the only reason I'm happy is because I haven't had all my sexual experiences that I've desired my whole life with the best looking girls I could find, whatever, or whatever. But when you have all those things in abundance and you're still unhappy, the last thing you do, I just had to I had to figure out what the heck was going on. So this was right around the time I got engaged, and it was extremely confusing. And so it led me to look at science, it led me to look at yogis, it led me to look at neurology, uh, therapy. I had a therapist for 5, 6 years at that time. I mean, just anything I could find, personal development, but I tried all of it. I couldn't figure it out. And so this got me hyper focused. So long story short, I hope I'm not boring you guys with TMI.
This is good stuff, man.
Good, good. So, long story short, that was the time where I'd say it was 2 years prior to our relationship ending. And that's when we were engaged, but it really kicked in more when we got married, because then I realized marriage didn't do it either. And then she was talking about kids, and I was like, no, that's not going to help either. So no, let's not do that.
Right.
But, so when that happened, man, I had to make a choice. I said, I have to give everything to this, because I wasn't, especially for me at that time, I wasn't good with balancing life and, you know, a relationship, as well as balancing trying to figure out this information. Do you see? Trying to figure out, why is my brain unhappy and miserable when there's nothing left to get in this life? You know, I mean, she's everything I've wanted in a wife, but you just, you know, so I had to figure it out. So long story short, that's when it came to me. As I kept going down this journey. I kept tasting moments of bliss, and I knew I was on the right path. It's just undeniable. It's not something that I just created in my head due to illusion. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was like experiencing bliss, and then moments to meditate. I started meditating a lot at that time, like 4 hours a day. I was thirsty, man, desperate, thirsty, and so whatever it took. So I started meditating a lot. I would feel amazing bliss. You know, this, when I say bliss, I'm talking way beyond pleasure and happiness. Like, think about your happiest day, maybe that's touching bliss, but I would have moments maybe a little above that. So there was something beyond that felt completely fulfilled, completely peaceful and joyful.
So this was while you were still married, you were meditating?
Yeah. Yes, just meditating, and then it started leading toward the spirituality world. Even though I think of it less as spirituality, it's just more a truth, just being aligned with truth. There's nothing spiritual about truth to me, but sure, we can call it that. But
Right.
I started finding there was, you know, it's like a dog can sniff a scent. It's like I can sense it. It was there, maybe with my intuition. So then, but I had taste of it, but I was still hitting really low lows, you know. But then I started finding a bit more, oh wait, I'm here. Then I knew it was right. So long story short, this is pretty much, in my opinion, what led toward closer to the ending of the relationship. Because at this time, my wife, she really, really wanted closeness, you know, from me. And I couldn't give her that because I didn't know how to balance the two. So there was a lot of, so I would say it was completely, gosh, man, in retrospect, it was completely the right path for me, but completely, I feel bad for how, not, I don't feel guilty, because at the end of the day, our happiness is not coming from, which I had to learn. It has nothing to do with what happens outside of you. Are you happy within? That's the only way. And everybody knows this on a simple, obvious way, but we can go more into depth of it in a minute. But so it's not like I made her unhappy, right? But I still feel I still wish I hugged her more. I loved her more, and I sat with her emotions and understood, and we had better conversations. But hey, you know, there's no mistakes, not at all. I needed all this. So I can tell the relationship was dwindling, but I said, I need this more than I need my marriage. I need this more than I need anything. Because if I'm not good, then how am I going to be good for you? And my goal at the time, or maybe a justification, was to, I was doing this for both of us. And I was, in a way, because I can see her hitting extremely low, painful lows, lower than I've ever seen anyone a lot of the time. And it was, and I hope that doesn't, she's, I think she's doing so much better, and she's amazing. So I don't want it to sound like there was anything wrong with her in the slightest. We were both there. But you know, the lows, I was like, I got to figure this out for us. But I have to do it first so that I can share it. You know, so the goal was, everything else I've achieved in life was like so fast. Like everything in the material world, I could just do really fast. So I thought it'd take like 3 months. So I told her, I was like, hey, I just need a few months. I thought it was gonna be 3 weeks, hilariously. Then I thought it was gonna be about 3 months. And what do you know? It took around 3 years to finally figure it out. So, but you know, yeah, that's how it goes. And then at that time, there was no saving the relationship or anything like that. So at the same time, I lost my marriage. I lost my dog, my physical dog, of 20 years. This was all within a few months. I lost my house. I lost the car. I lost my business pretty much because the business I didn't have time for either. I couldn't manage the working. I didn't want more clients. I wanted all the time because I was spending about pretty much all my waking hours walking by myself with no stimulation, no headphones, just walking till something clicks, you know, and taking in whatever information here and there, but mostly just spending time with myself. So, and I still go on walks every day. But anyways, so um, long story short, man, I everything was gone pretty much. Everything got stripped from me, and it was then the pain hit a much deeper level. But I knew I needed to do it, so I was okay with it, but I hated it. So I moved to Arizona. I'm so blessed, but this is the way the universe works. But also my friends, two of my really close friends from Denver, they live here and they have a nice, beautiful home, and they let me stay here for pretty close to free. You know, they said as long as I need. And in that time, 100% of my time, pretty much, if not 95, is just going to my emotions, sitting there for as long as it takes, months and months, or sitting there just exploring what's going on, seeing the thoughts that are connected to the emotions, what thoughts are going when I feel emotions, all that stuff, just doing everything to the max I could. And I found that the lowest low that was unbearable pain, it was literally, it hurt to breathe, man. That's how it felt. You know, it was really, really bad. But I never ran from it. I allowed it always to be there because I needed to figure it out. So, in other words, it was a blessing. I'm so glad. I didn't want any of it avoided, and I knew that. So, long story short, man, I got it started. I started. When you want something that bad, the universe supports you. So everything just kind of started supporting me, and I could cry right now how grateful I am for finding for grace and just for understanding happiness in living it in a completely stable way, not avoiding. There's no avoidance that would cause misery, and there's not delusion that would also not work, but finding it in truth and reality. And man, dude, it's somewhat emotional for me, man. It really is. I'm so grateful.
So what is that realization for you? You kind of started touching on it there, but like talk to me like I'm a kindergartner. Like, what is that realization that has hit you in this time of like kind of starting over, you know, getting down to your roots, getting down to the darkness? What is that realization? What have you internalized?
I found that every single ounce of pain that we feel is connected to a belief. The reason why we have a belief is because we don't see truth, and we're trying to find comfort in the known because we're so afraid of the unknown. So one of the traps we fall into is thinking that there's peace in a sense of security and comfort. We think that that's peace, but that's not peace. Seeking security creates insecurity. And then we think that there's happiness in experience, but that's not happiness. Seeking happiness creates unhappiness. I had to figure this out. So I know this is distilled into like a simple sentence, and it's like, oh, easy. But we can go as deep into it as you like. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say it's simple, but that's kind of what I was looking for as far as like a realization is like, I think that helps kind of make sense of your experience of like gathering all these experiences and then being confused as to why, you know, opposite of what you thought, you weren't happy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, man. Because we think that we are so conditioned to believing that experience is what creates happiness. I'll explain why. There's two reasons. Because we had experience in the past where we were in the present moment, we felt happiness, and we mistaked it. We mistook it as the experience that made us happy. But we're not looking close enough. So, for example, let's say you're longing for a Apple TV. Okay, so you're like, oh man, I just really want that Apple TV. So you don't realize, but in that moment that you're seeking happiness from that object, you created unhappiness. So you were more happy 1 second before, deep down, right? Or more settled or whatever. But then you might feel that jolt of like excitement or whatever, but then you're creating unhappy because you're like, I need that to be happy. Then when you get it, you think that the thing that made you happy, but what actually made you happy was you ended the seeking for happiness. So then you have the experience of being happy. And so then after you realize that didn't work for a stable, because all we want is unconditional, stable sense of peace and joy, and then fulfillment. That's all we want. And you can say freedom, whatever, but you want it stable and unconditional. But then once you get it, your brain's like, oh, that kind of worked, but not really, because I felt it for a second and it went away. So now I need something else. So then as soon as you get the Apple TV, now you need popcorn. As soon as you get popcorn, you need a better movie. As soon as you get a better movie, you need whatever, right? And so the trap is thinking that more makes us happy. And it's not like, don't think of it as a black and white philosophy in the sense where you're like, if I have less, I'm happy. No, it's just every time you get more, you want more. And every time you get more, you want more. And every time you get more, you want more. It's because the happiness has nothing to do with that. It takes a while to see this. This is, of course, we can understand it logically. And that's what I mean by like, these truths you have to see. You cannot just learn them. They can't just stay in your head. It does nothing. It turns into a belief at that point.
Yeah, they have to be internalized.
You have to see the truth of it. So what I learned on this journey was, all the beliefs were causing suffering because they weren't aligned with truth. Why would you? It wouldn't be, if it was truth, it wouldn't be called a truth. It'd be a belief. Even if you have a belief about something that's actually true, it's still a belief for you, which means that, there's a sense of fear there. Okay. So I've noticed that all the unpleasant sensations that you experience are fear-based. And what is the best way to comfort from fear right away? There's either stay in the discomfort until you find the actual truth, which 99.9% of people, us, are conditioned not to do, or create a belief to give you temporary comfort. But when you create that belief, you just created more fear. Does that make sense? Which is uncertainty. So
you double down.
Double down. And so long story short, man, I realized that all the past and future where all these, why I was living in thoughts so much, is because I had all these beliefs planted that were still grounded in fear. But that it's impossible to stop your thoughts when that happens. You can't, your thoughts just go forever because they're always in fear. They're searching for security, happiness, and it's fear-based. So fear expressed in a masculine way, I found, is anger, frustration. And that's where I was a lot. But then underneath that, but fear expressed in, and this is my opinion, but fear expressed in a feminine way is sadness. So long story short, it's all fear-based. And so once I understood that, I realized the fear was always attached to a belief. Then the way to stop the thoughts can't stop thinking when that happens. But what happens is, as soon as that belief, you bring awareness to that belief, then what happens is there's natural, eventually when you keep looking at it, there's natural sense of understanding. Then when there's a natural sense of understanding, there's no more sense of resisting. So then when there's a natural sense of understanding without resistance, then you find love, right? Like peace. So then the brain it finds truth, we can say. And then thoughts stop. So thoughts only stop with truth. They don't stop with beliefs. So if your thoughts are going, don't ever try to stop them. That's never going to happen. You have to find truth. And the way to find truth is to bring more awareness there, not try to research something to put more beliefs in here, but bring awareness there. That awareness can find understanding. That understanding can find truth. And then there's peace, then the brain stops.
How do you find awareness instead of researching?
You have to go in and it has to be experiential. So let's talk about it in the context of people. I think you'll like this one. So whenever we see someone that triggers us, okay, 1000% of the time, every time, it's because let's put it this way. There's 8, we can talk functions. Is that okay to talk about on this channel? Like functions, personality type functions? Okay, it's just, you guys don't need to know what they are. You can Google them if you'd like, but there's 8 personality type functions. Everyone is everyone. Everyone has all of the functions inside of them. Okay, all of them. I have found, it's just my opinion, this is not based on what objective personality says, but our introverted functions are where we seek a sense of security. Our extroverted functions are exploration, trying to seek happiness. Okay, that's the foundation of these functions. So everyone has everything. For example, whether you have the function of SI or SE activated, you have both in you. We all seek security in sensory at times. We all seek happiness in the sensory at times. We all seek, whatever. You could do that with every function. They all have an introverted, extroverted charge. Okay, so everyone is doing these things. So everyone's everyone. But when something triggers you, if we're speaking just functions, it's always because you don't have enough awareness to have understanding of what that is. So what happens is you find out something someone does triggers you. Then what you can do is you can realize the trigger came from here. It's experienced in here. Right. Same thing can trigger someone else, or it's happen to someone else and they have no trigger. It's amazing, man, to realize this. So long story short, you find out what the trigger is and you realize that that's a blind spot for you. So now you got to go in and bring awareness to explore what is that triggered me and why. Then when you go and explore it, eventually you will find, and I have worksheets to help with this, but eventually you'll find understanding for yourself. This is not about them anymore. You figure out, why is that triggering me? Then you go in and you look, and then you find understanding to that part of you that you were seeing in them, but you didn't understand. Then you find it in you. Then you start to understand that part of you, because everyone is everyone. So you find that part of you, right? So this is the part of me that acted out in anger because I was fearful of whatever. Then when you have that understanding, you naturally have peace and love for that part of you within you. You brought it to the light. Then when you have a natural peace and love for that part of you and understanding, understanding is love. So now you naturally understand them, which means you naturally love them so much more without effort. This is all no effort. You don't use willpower. That's a silly method, in my opinion, which will get you almost nowhere. You just have to bring that sense of awareness there. So when you see that part in you, and you understand it, and it's truly understood, and you love that part of you, then the sense of separation between you and others starts to disintegrate. You realize you're the same exact. You're the whole consciousness. You're all of it. But we're limiting ourselves to only thinking that, oh, I like this, I don't like this, I believe this, I don't believe that, and it's just trapping us in a corner more and more as we get older.
And I think it's important to say too that you're speaking truth, right? Like aligning ourselves with that truth takes a lot of time. Like this is all conceptual. This is like, this is great in theory to like be like, all right, Josh, like go perfectly interact with everybody. It's not going to happen. So it's like you're just more talking about the awareness and the pursuit and the goal of like realization and internalizing that we are basically mirrors of each other. Right?
Well, we are mirrors. It moves way faster than you think, trust me. But it also doesn't mean you get it and it's done overnight. But it moves really fast. But you don't even care at a certain point, because there's no more fear in life. You don't care what happens, because you know what to do with it. So with that said, there is a few worksheets I have, and we'll put one in the description. I call it the security system, because when you have an emotional trigger, it's your security system. It's like, is this, and it helps you see, is it a false alarm or is it a real alarm? That's why I call it the security system. And it helps you see why you got triggered, where you were seeking a sense of security or happiness if you were, and things like that. So we'll put that link in the description below. It is in beta testing, but I would say, but we've had quite a bit of people using it for a long time. Yeah, and it's been great.
I've used it. It's been really helpful. So definitely we'll put that down there and check that out. And that's a good segue too to the next question I was going to ask you, which is like, what practices have been helpful for you in your hardest times? I know that's probably one of them. That is a product of a practice that you've made. But anything else specifically that's just I know this is a sensory question, but like what practically have you done to help yourself get back in that curious mindset of where you're catching yourself quicker, in trying to fill that void?
Well, anytime there's any discomfort in the slightest, emotional discomfort in the slightest, or psychological discomfort or confusion in the brain. So I think of, here's how I think of it. I think what happens is we start with truth, and then we get blessed with imagination. Now, this imagination, as it keeps going, it gets stuck in the weeds of belief. As soon as there's a belief, our imagination gets stuck. Now we're trapped. We're trapped in fear, and we're trying to figure out how to get back home. The way back home is to find truth. And then poof, it disappears. And then your brain can't think about truth for very long. It's truth. Our brains aren't thinking about truth. They're thinking about beliefs, concepts, and all this stuff. Now, the same opposite thing is sensations. So then with sensations, I've noticed is the sensations, they start with the sense of love. Then they go out, and get experiences, feelings, or whatever. And then they get stuck in fear. So then when they get stuck in fear, what's the way out of fear? Because, and by the way, you can notice the two are the same. Fear is belief, or belief. Yeah, fear is a belief. They're the same thing. So then what happens is the sensation just wants to be expressed. It just wants to be evaporated. Just like the beliefs want to be expressed, evaporated. They just, so truth evaporates. I hope you guys are following me. Truth evaporates the beliefs, and then expression evaporates the sensations. We can say just without fear. Fear blocks the sensation from being fully expressed. That's it. Now, what emotions are is the two combined, in my opinion. So it's a belief combined with the sensation. That's what I see as emotions. So understanding this helps you get a framework of how to approach these things. If you just see emotions as one thing, good luck. You're not gonna know what to do with them. You're gonna think, oh, this is natural. This is supposed to happen. I'm supposed to have unpleasant emotions. Blah blah blah. So for me, what I had to do is I had to create fundamental worksheets for myself to use. So I created a worksheet to help you separate the thoughts, the belief that's attached, and then the emotion. There's two different methods. You can go through either one, see which one's more in that moment, which is alive to do. So I created worksheets for dealing with those things. I created worksheets for when someone triggers you, what to do. So I created a lot of sensory step-by-step things, but it all comes down to kind of like, for me, a lot of like journaling, um, but journaling through the worksheets, you know. So journaling and or just filling out a worksheet, which probes questions to find truth, not to, you know, stimulate an answer, because you don't want the answer, you want the truth.
Let's say I come to you, I'm like, all right, and you've done this with me before, so I know you can do it. All right, Josh, somebody at work really pissed me off. And let's just say it's my boss. They're being unfair. You know, they're pushing me. All right, what do I do? So this is a people issues. You know, my boss. I don't want to go to work because I don't want to see my boss because, you know, he pisses me off. So what do I do?
Okay, so first off, I strongly suggest for everyone to always write it down, write it down, write it down, write it down, because if not, your thoughts are always going to move. So we won't for this scenario, but you got to write it down. I tried both ways a million times. I didn't want to write it down, but I found that you have to write it down, at least from in my experience. And I find in people I help with these experiences, because it stabilizes those thoughts so that they're not moving all. You could just look at the one thought and keep your focus on one thought for now, because brains are just going all over the place. Okay, so what specifically triggered you about your boss?
Well, I work really hard every day, and he's always, you know, he's always talking to me like, yeah, I don't do enough. And it pisses me off because I work really hard and he doesn't see it.
So what would you want to, what is it that you're desiring that would, if you had your way in a perfect world, what would it be that you would want him to do, or what would you want the situation to be?
And like, I want him to be more grateful. I want him to like encourage me and say, you did a good job, and I see how hard you're working, and he doesn't.
Okay, so you want him to, and so I always try to get to this most specific as possible. So you want him to verbalize that he appreciates it,
Yeah.
appreciates you, and sees
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah, at a minimum. Yeah.
Okay, and what do you think that would give you?
I think it made me feel better about the work I'm doing.
Okay, so you think it would make you feel better? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and why do you think that that'd make you feel better?
Because I like when people affirm me.
Okay, and what is it that you like about people affirming you?
It makes me feel, well, a couple things. It makes me feel like I'm working, like it makes me feel better about working hard, like it's worth it. And it makes me feel appreciated, and I want to feel appreciated.
Okay, so you want to have thoughts that you're appreciated. So even if they said all those things that you wanted them to say, does it matter to you if they mean it or not?
Yeah, I want to feel like they mean it.
But can you possibly know if they mean it or not?
No, not perfectly, for sure.
Okay, so I would sit with that for a sec and see if you notice anything. If there's like, if you feel a little bit more peace from noticing that, wait a minute, no matter what they say, I could never know. If and that's why it's always good when it's a real example though, because then you can really feel it. But you could sit with it and say, okay, wait a minute, I can never know if they're just saying it and if they mean it anyway. So really, and then so maybe so for me, what could be coming up would be like, if I was doing this, I'd be like, oh, so maybe I just want their words to say something so that I can believe, you know, that what I'm doing is great, you know, or whatever. So then I would ask myself the question and be like, okay, well, if, you know, is what I am doing great? Is that true, or is it not true? So if you can follow me there, then say like, so my question for you would be like, okay, so we can go here. So it'd be like, okay, so you want their words so that you can believe that you're doing something great. So now my question, does that resonate? So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now, is it true that you're doing something great?
I guess that's subjective.
Right. So if you knew for 100% fact you were doing something great, but they would never see it, would you still want them to say it?
I guess I wouldn't need them to if I knew it.
Right. So maybe this is not about them noticing you're doing something great. Maybe it's about you noticing if you're doing something great. So, and we just find the truth. Don't say the right answers, but you're not. But you don't want to just find the answers. You got to just find whatever the truth is. The truth is choiceless. It's not like you can choose what the truth is. It's already there. You've already believed this, feel this, whatever. So you want to find what's true already.
Right.
Okay.
And that's good enough, I think, for that one, Josh.
Yeah.
I think that kind of illustrates what's happening, which is you're discovering that what you're looking for out there can be found in here, right? Like that's
It's only found in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never found out there because we don't want what's out there. We think we do. What we really want is peace and happiness, right? And peace and happiness, I can't look and see. I don't see peace out there. I don't see happiness out there. What's it look like? It's not out there. It's only here. So, yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, we're all naturally looking for happiness out there because from an evolutionary perspective, we're designed to do that. But at the end of the day, it is always in here.
Well, yeah, I would say it's fundamentally true for everyone because if you're unhappy, then there's something you're seeking for something. You can't not be seeking, right? Security or happiness if you're if you're happy, if you're peaceful and happy, right? So it's more about what object are you seeking? Is it relationships, objects like physical objects, sensations, experiences, substances, whatever, so it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's just where if you're not completely at ease and peace, which is weird because it's actually completely natural to be completely at peace and ease. I see why we think it isn't because nobody else is, it seems, right?
Right.
So yeah, but it's like if you were out of shape for a long time and then you started eating healthy and then you feel so good, you're just feeling normal, but you're like, man, I feel amazing. Well, that's what normal is. And it's the same thing with like complete peace and joy. Those are your natural qualities. So we think that like happiness comes and goes. No, happiness is always here. Peace is always here. But what happens is we have a belief that comes between it and veils it. And so all we're working with is the beliefs that come in the way, and then it's just stable, 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 stable. It's your level of happiness and peace and contentment just goes up, fulfillment up, 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 and then your baseline is just. Then you hit a point where it's just you don't really care. There's no more fear. Something else comes up, you know what to do. You've done it so many times. Yeah, it's really nice. It does it almost automatically at a point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the distinction between, we haven't said it this way yet, but I think it's the distinction between that curious approach and the judgmental approach, because judgment is associated with survival. Like it's whenever we're growing up and we're in our families and we're learning about the world, like all of our hard traumatic experience start wiring our brains together in a certain way that makes us judge and have certain attitudes towards certain people and certain things. And so I think what you're talking about is kind of unraveling and really starting to dig into and question those attitudes, right? Those judgments that we have that actually are what make us unhappy. We think that feeling safe, certain, and secure is like happiness, but we don't realize that we already are safe.
Yeah, completely.
And secure.
It's just your thoughts get in the way and trick you. Beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you heard of Dan Gilbert?
I have not, no.
So Dan Gilbert's a psychologist, or he calls himself a happiness expert. Okay. And he actually talks about a lot of this stuff, but he did he does like the research side of this, where they'll actually like bring people in, study their happiness, like study their emotional responses. And I don't know if you've heard about this example before, but they compared somebody who won the lottery to someone who became a paraplegic. And then they studied their happiness for a year. And like at very beginning of it all, they both were very different. Like obviously the person who won the lottery, like they were revved up and super excited in the moment. And then the paraplegic was super sad and down and depressed. But as everything leveled out, they researched them 1 year later and they had the exact same level of happiness.
Yeah.
And
that sounds right.
And one of the things that Dan talks about is this idea of synthetic happiness. And it's basically this idea that we don't actually have to have what we're chasing to feel happy. One of the ways that they demonstrated this is they told people to choose a painting that they wanted to take home. And they had one group that had 4 days to decide if they wanted that painting. And then another group that was forced to keep the painting that they chose and couldn't make a choice. Well, the ones that were forced to keep the painting convinced themselves that they made the best choice. And they had what was called synthetic happiness. Like they convinced themselves that they made the better choice. And then they measured the ones that had the opportunity to choose again after 4 days, and they were unsatisfied. And this is exactly what you're talking about, because it's basically like kicking the can of happiness down the road and like next thing, next thing, because it's not the painting that was actually making them happy. And that's why Dan Gilbert says that synthetic happiness is identical to whatever we think of as real happiness when we get something. They're no different. because happiness is internal, essentially. So I thought that was a pretty cool example.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think it just affirms what you're talking about, that our work is to catch ourselves in that pursuit, right? Because we're actually creating the unhappiness in the pursuit. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I think it's very important to not take this on as another belief. You have to look for it. You don't have to believe anything I don't want you to believe anything I say, because whether you disagree or agree, it's not bringing you closer to truth. It doesn't matter. Truth is truth is what sets us free, and it's true. That is true. So you have to, every single time you look, you don't want the concept like, oh, like, because then it turns into a belief and a concept. So sneaky. It's so sneaky the way the brain is, because it's like, oh, the things don't make me happy. It's not the things that make me happy, and then we stop there because we're using a belief. What happens is, when we're confused, confusion is such a good thing, but confusion ends from one of two things. It ends from either a belief, which is prematurely, which is trying to give a sense of comfort because it feels uncomfortable, or it ends from awareness. Don't fall for the belief. Even if you had a realization yesterday that seemed crystal clear, what happens is we try to remember that. Like a lot of people who do mushrooms or something like that, is like they see reality clearly, but then they think that they're awake. But that's now just a memory, which is now just a belief. It's not alive in the moment. The truth is alive in the moment. It's not in a thought or a belief. So my point is be careful. The mind is so tricky and sneaky, where it can easily turn what I'm saying into another belief and philosophy. Don't fall for that trap. You have to see it every single moment fresh, clearly. So you look. Every time I go, dude, there's no beliefs there's no philosophy. There is none of that. You're just looking for truth. The truth is alive right now. It's not a dead memory that you had yesterday or 2 minutes ago.
Right, because then you start chasing that philosophy again, and then the fear comes
same
back.
Trap. Yep, same trap. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And if we think about, say, just to throw in, like, what fear is intelligence, but we mistake, because we're in our heads, we're mistaking what fear is. Fear is saying that you're placing a sense of security in something that deep down in your subconscious is inherently insecure. That's what fear is. So, but we mistake it as saying that fear is saying, no, this is bad, run away, whatever. Because fear makes you look, it doesn't make you look closer, it makes you look away. It makes you run the other way. Where awareness, or curiosity makes you look closer. And when you look closer, I have not found one fear yet, that the snake in the rope analogy, you walk down the street, you think you see a snake, so you freak out, you could even have a heart attack and die because it becomes so real for you. But then you look a little closer and realize it was just a rope. Well, in that case, to know it's a rope, you have to look closer. And I have found that every single fear or discomfort I've ever had, ever so far in my experience, was always a rope. You just have to look closer. Can you imagine if you see this over and over, the amount of fearlessness that just naturally happens without willpower or effort? Because, man, in that personal development world, man, it's all this willpower and effort, and that just doesn't work. It's draining. You get like 1%, if you're lucky, here every freaking few months, So anyways, I hope that's interesting enough for people.
Yeah, it is. Well, people in my audience are in like all different kinds of journeys, and some, I'm sure a good portion of my audience are still like Christian, like believers. Some aren't. Like, but if you could leave everybody with one like takeaway or like life advice, from all you've gone through, Josh, what would you say to anybody listening to this? Like, what's your final word?
Can I give 3?
Yeah.
1, seeking security creates insecurity. Seeking happiness creates unhappiness. If you look 1 second before you started seeking, you'll see that you were in a more secure place and a more happy place. Keep noticing that. That's it. 2, look for whatever beliefs you have. Just look for truth, because what's true is always going to stand and give you that stable peace that you're looking for. Belief is always going to keep you unsure and uncertain and keep fear in you. Okay, so look for that. And 3, I would say, just everyone is your gift, your mirror. The people that drive you the most crazy are the people you want to not move away from with fear, move closer to, because you got to see they are the part of me that. So see what part of you is in there. So that would be the 3 things. And then I would say 100% of your fears and beliefs are like your fears or problems. They're all imagined. And actually, I think I've heard Byron Katie say that, so I'm going to steal that. But yeah, they all came from just not looking close enough. Yeah, it's amazing, man. It's amazing how simple, and I created worksheets to try to make it even more simple. So I really hope that helps you guys. So it's completely free, and I hope everybody can enjoy them. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out or anything like that.
Yeah, check them out. I think that's a good place to finish. It's kind of finishing where we started. And that's why I like connecting with you and other double deciders, because you're a gift in my life to show me like, okay, you're so afraid of something, but look at, like, you're so afraid of people, Russ, but look at Josh facing people. And like, and so then I'm able to internalize that. And the same thing for you, like looking at me, like you're watching me deal with chaos and, you know, complicated stuff. And you're like, okay, well, it must not be that bad because he's not freaking out. And then that's a way that we can really, I think, do the math and triangulate ourselves to facing that, you know, the proverbial rope, right? Because for me, the rope is always people. It's always people. Like
Yeah.
I can have the most chaotic thing. The thing that comes to my mind, dude, I have an Airbnb, or I had an Airbnb, and the second person that stayed in the Airbnb destroyed the whole house. Like they destroyed my couch. They got stuff all over the carpet. Like everything was ruined. And I had to walk in and like process this. And it was awful. I was mad, but like I wasn't triggered. I was not triggered. And so many other people in that same situation would have been like, oh, this is awful. This is forever. This is the end of the world, right? But like it's triangulating, being like, okay, if I can see people like that, if I can learn to not be afraid and just let myself lean in, right? Lean in, then I can experience like a little bit more growth. So I appreciate you articulating it the way you did, especially at the end around like walk closer to that rope, like move closer, because it's not a snake. You think it is. Yeah. And the brain tells you it is, but let yourself move closer to it, because that rope is the truth. You're trying to move closer to the truth.
That's right, man. Yeah, very good. I like that, man. That's a great way of thinking about it, how you're talking about the chaos and all that. And yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So, man, I don't have anything else. Any other thoughts you have to close us out with?
You know, I would say one more thing that I think will help, rather, because I think, you know, Russ, seeing him with the people issues is the part of us that has anxieties around the tribe, right? So that's the part of us that has that. So what I would say, Russ, is like, so for anyone who's has that similar thing, when you do the math wherever your area is do as much what we just did, do as much of that around that. So now you know that if you feel fear, you're seeking a sense of security somewhere. And if you feel unhappy or like discontentment, you're seeking a sense of happiness somewhere. Okay. So there's a little trick for you to like narrow down, to be like, oh wait, okay, I feel fear around people. That must mean I'm seeking a sense of security and comfort around people. Okay. So now you could kind of keep narrowing down there and say, okay, can people give me a sense of safety and security? Can people give me a sense of safety and security? And then every time that comes up, you know, and that's why I like the security system worksheet, because I would hone in on that really heavy for the next 2 weeks nonstop. I would do as many different varieties of that as I can. Be like, can my mom give me security? Can this person give me a sense of security and peace? And then what is it? How do I expect them to give me a sense of security and peace? Where is the areas that I'm seeking security and peace? Why do I want a sense of security and peace from people? And once you see the truth of something, you can stand in front of that rope forever, and you can never get afraid again, because you see very clearly it's a rope. It's not a willpower thing. So my point is, you only have to see everything once. Just clearly, you have to see it once, and then it ends on its own. Thoughts don't spiral on truth. They're done. So my point is naturally your thoughts just go shh, and then eventually it's just, yeah.
Well, that brings up one other thing I wanted to say too on this topic before we finish as well. So in some of the stuff I've learned about the brain, we have like our frontal lobe, right? Like our thinking brain, our cerebral cortex. And then we have our animal brain, right? Our reptilian, our amygdala. And the brain processes bottom up. And what that means is a lot of times triggers are not cerebral. So I want to say this because I want to add some nuance to what you're saying. And I'm practically learning this just from being in therapy and working through some EMDR. But I encourage people, like, definitely there's a lot you can do on your own. But my personal opinion and experience is getting with a therapist who can give me an outside perspective is really helpful too. Because what my therapist has been helping me do is start to take some of these things that you're talking about, Josh, but internalizing them emotionally. Like, because there's a difference between the thinking brain and the feeling brain. They're different parts of your brain. And it's not that the thinking brain can penetrate into the feeling brain after a while. But if you want to fast track this, there's things like EMDR that are really helpful that basically help you tap into your emotional state in your animal brain and disconnect those neural fears. It's the same thing that we've been talking about. But I just say that I always encourage people to see a therapist. So I wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, so you know, there's the emotional part is especially for me with the way my functions are set up. The emotion part was a big one for me that can't be overlooked. You can't just the logic is one area of understanding, and the sensations are another. So there's a whole different approach for when you're working through sensations that unfortunately we didn't get to on this talk. But I would say there's, how can I explain it? So I would just say, notice that they're two different parts, but the emotions cannot survive, right, when there's enough awareness brought there. But bringing awareness to the body, to what's going on here, is, for me, it was more important than the logic came second. So in other words, you don't want to go in trying to get rid of the unpleasant emotions or whatever, because then you're biased. You're not going to be able to see truth anyway. But what you can do is see if the emotions, for me, if they're a 7 or higher out of 10, I don't ever go to the logic. I don't try to figure out the logical part that we've been talking about at all. That's when I go deep into the emotion. And what I do is I let the emotion be. I open up, so I check and see if there's any physical resistance or anything, and I allow the emotion to get so big and just get bigger. I want to bring it. I want to get closer to the emotion. So this is opposite than what we're talking about. But I want the emotion. I want to get closer to the emotion to actually see it. So I let it get bigger and bigger, and I try to let it consume my entire body, like as big as it can get. I try to bring it as big as it can get without effort and will. It's just letting go of the resistance and let it go as big as it can. And I don't feel like that part is done until I can sit there and honestly say that I can live with this sensation for the rest of my life. When that's the truth, when I find that, then I'm ready to move on to the logical piece of it. Because remember, emotions are both. It's logical and sensations. You got to deal with the sensations first sometimes. When I said truth is in the moment, that's why it's different. It varies. When you're in the moment, you don't want to be rigid and be like, oh, I got to do emotion first. I got to do logic first. You got to, or sorry, sensations and logic. You got to go through both as needed. But until you allow those emotions to run their course, they're going to stay there. So, or to run the body, they want to be released. So you have to be willing to die. If it feels like it's going to kill you, then say, okay, I'm going to let it kill me. Let it kill you and see what happens. So the emotions feel bigger and bigger and bigger. Good, because the resisting of it due to the fear is why it stays there. So right. That's an extremely important piece that we didn't touch on. And I think it depends on the person, which is going to be more intense. But I don't think there's a way around it personally. For me, I had to go through both pieces, from the emotional, that was the bigger part of me for me. And then the logic completely, like after the emotion got kind of released through the body, it allowed it to find its peace so that it didn't come back.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that both are important, because
Absolutely,
if you deal with one and then you don't deal, like, you can figure it out logically, but if you haven't worked through the emotional component, it doesn't matter. Like, because the emotions are still going to keep working you and taking you back to that same fear. And you'll think you've gotten over the fear because you've gotten through it up here. But if you haven't worked through the emotions and you haven't actually sat with it and internalized it. So that's a whole other topic for another
Great
time.
Great point. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up, man. That's very important. Yeah.
But thanks, Josh, for coming on, man. I'm sure, dude, there's a ton of good nuggets in here and just a lot of good insights. So you don't, is there anything else you want to plug other than the sheets we'll put on here? You're not doing YouTube anymore, are you?
Oh man, I've been ghost from the world for a while now. So no, I got nothing going on. So I just hope it helps, man. Like whatever is helpful, I hope it helps, and whatever it sounds silly, then just do as you wish with it. But yeah, I just I appreciate you for having me on, my dude. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram, Joshua McCray Official, and go ahead and message me on there. So JOSHUAMCCRAY Official. That's my handle on Instagram. Cool. There we go. I forgot I got social media. I haven't uploaded and posted in so long. I've been in my own world figuring this stuff out. I'm just really enjoying life right now. But yeah,
man. Well, thanks. I know it's going to be helpful for people, and I know that you've really helped and encouraged me. Like, not only your calmness around people, but just your insight. So really grateful for the time you spent with me, and I hope this is helpful for everybody.
Hey, and ditto, man. Yeah, ditto. You've been the same for me, so I appreciate you, my man.
Cool, buddy.